This is the story of a legendary sniper capable of taking down targets from several kilometers away, even while blindfolded. However, before becoming such a deadly marksman, he was simply an ordinary mathematics teacher. He deeply disliked both guns and war, but a single incident changed his life forever, transforming him from a respectable teacher into a merciless sniper. The story opens in a small village in Ukraine where a modest house can be seen. A married couple lives there and enjoys a peaceful life together. The husband's name is Mykola, while his wife is called Nastya. Nastya is an artist who enjoys drawing and carving different sculptures out of wood. Mykola works as a teacher and teaches mathematics to children at a nearby school. He is known as an excellent teacher, and almost every student likes him. However, there is one exception, a boy named Avon. Avon is extremely ill-mannered and causes trouble for his teacher almost every day. Coming from a wealthy family, Avon often looks down on Mykola because he is poor. He constantly mocks Mykola's appearance and the clothes that he wears. Avon's goal is to provoke Mykola into losing his temper and striking him. If that happened, he planned to file a complaint and get Mykola removed from the school. But Mykola is a very patient and calm individual. He never lets Avon's insults affect him and continues living his life peacefully. Since Mykola's house lacks electronic devices such as a television and other modern equipment, he rarely receives updates about what is happening in the world. Then, one day, while he is at school, he hears breaking news being shown on television. The report states that Russia has launched an attack on Ukraine. During the conflict, many soldiers have been killed, and Russian forces have already captured several areas. That evening, when Mykola returned home, he learned that Nastya was pregnant. Hearing this made him incredibly happy because he was about to become a father. The two celebrated the joyful news together. The next morning, Mykola said goodbye to his wife and rode his bicycle to the school where he taught children mathematics. While traveling there, he noticed two soldiers standing by the road smoking cigarettes. Their uniforms looked unfamiliar and were completely different from those worn by Ukrainian soldiers. Mykola found it strange but assumed the government had probably introduced new uniforms, so he didn't pay much attention and continued towards school. When he arrived, he was shocked to find the entire school empty. Not a single student had come that day. Feeling uneasy, he looked at the television and saw news reports stating that Russian forces had entered Ukraine and were taking control of different regions. Only then did he realize that the soldiers he had seen earlier were actually Russian troops. Immediately worried about Nastya being alone at home, Mykola jumped onto his bicycle and hurried back. Unfortunately, he was already too late. Upon reaching his house, he found the two soldiers brutally beating his wife. He rushed forward to protect her, but the soldiers began beating him as well. Mykola pleaded with them, saying that his wife was pregnant, but they ignored his words and continued attacking them. After a while, one of the soldiers searched the house. When he failed to find anything valuable, he became angry, set the house on fire, and prepared to leave. Watching her home burn, Nastya became furious. She grabbed a stone and started attacking the soldiers. In response, one of them fired his weapon, killing her instantly. The moment Mykola saw his wife fall, it felt as though the world had collapsed around him. He rushed to her side, held her in his arms, and cried uncontrollably. Several hours later, two Ukrainian soldiers arrived. Seeing Nastya dead filled them with sadness. They comforted Mykola and then dug a grave for her. Once it was ready, they asked him to bury his wife there. After her death, Mykola was completely shattered. He had lost everything. The Russian soldiers had not only murdered his wife, but had also taken away his unborn child and destroyed his home. Consumed by revenge, Mykola vowed to kill the soldier responsible for shooting Nastya. He knew the only way to do that was by joining the Ukrainian army, so he asked the two soldiers to take him with them. The soldiers agreed and brought him to their military base. Before leaving, Mykola took a small wooden statue that Nastya had carved herself, believing it would protect him. When they arrived at the base, the senior officer became suspicious and refused to recruit him, fearing he might be a spy. However, after hearing the full story from the soldiers, Mykola explained everything himself. He told the officer how Russian troops had killed his wife and unborn child and burned down his house. "I have no reason left to live," he said. "I only want to free my country by killing those Russian soldiers." Moved by his story, the officer finally agreed to accept Mykola into the army. The next day, Mykola's military training officially began. Since he had spent his entire life as a mathematics teacher, adapting to soldier life proved difficult. Unlike the other recruits, he had no experience with firearms. During one exercise, the soldiers were instructed to assemble their rifles, but Mykola lagged behind everyone else and finished last. Watching this, the officer doubted that Mykola would ever become a capable soldier. Even so, Mykola refused to be discouraged and devoted himself completely to improving. While the other recruits slept at night, he continued practicing on his own. One evening, Mykola asked his superior not to address him by his real name anymore and revealed that he wanted his code name to be Raven. The other soldiers immediately burst into laughter. His superior explained that a code name had to be earned through exceptional service and dedication to the country. Rather than feeling insulted, Makola used their mockery as motivation and trained even harder. Later, the officer announced that the army was facing a shortage of snipers and needed more trained marksmen to fight the Russians. He asked for volunteers, and several soldiers stepped forward. Makola was one of them because he wanted to become a sniper as well. The moment the others saw him volunteer, they laughed again. The officer reminded him that he still struggled with basic rifle assembly and was not yet ready for sniper duties. Makola insisted he only needed an opportunity to prove himself. To test him, the officer challenged him to assemble a rifle within 20 seconds. Determined to prove his worth, Makola blindfolded himself, completely disassembled the weapon, and then put it back together. He finished in just 18 seconds. Everyone was stunned by his speed and precision. The same soldiers who had mocked him moments earlier now applauded. Impressed, the officer finally allowed him to join sniper training. During the course, Makola received an outdated rifle while the other trainees were equipped with modern weapons. When he requested a newer rifle, the officer told him he would first need to earn it. With no alternative, he accepted the old firearm and continued training. One lesson focused on remaining perfectly still under pressure. The officer explained that a sniper must never abandon his position regardless of the circumstances and must remain focused on the target at all times. To test this, shots were fired close to the trainees. Any sniper who flinched or moved would fail immediately. When Makola's turn arrived, he remained motionless and never took his eyes off the target, successfully passing the exercise. The next challenge required the trainees to memorize a target after seeing it only once. Afterward, they were blindfolded and had to identify and shoot the correct target from memory. Several soldiers managed to pass. When Makola attempted the test, his shot landed slightly off target. The failure was largely due to the poor condition of his old rifle, which made accurate aiming difficult. Even so, everyone recognized that with a modern weapon, he likely would have succeeded. The following exercise was even tougher. The snipers had to hit their targets at night using only the brief light produced by flares. The officer launched a flare and every trainee fired, yet none managed to score a hit. Unlike the others, Makola did not shoot. He realized firing directly under the flare's light was ineffective. When another flare illuminated the area, he carefully calculated the target's distance using the light and applied his mathematical knowledge. Then he fired a single shot and hit perfectly. The officer and the other soldiers were amazed. No trainee had ever completed that exercise successfully before. Makola was the first. Deeply impressed, the officer officially granted him the codename Raven. As time passed, Makola continued dedicating himself entirely to training. Eventually, the day arrived when the final results would be announced. The colonel saluted him and informed him that he had successfully passed all the required tests. A few days later, the colonel returned and ordered Makola to gather his belongings because a mission awaited them. Intelligence reports indicated that Russian troops had seized a checkpoint, and this was where the real story truly began. Soon, Makola and his unit reached the area and took up firing positions. Just as they prepared to engage the Russian soldiers, a civilian vehicle approached the checkpoint. The colonel immediately instructed everyone to hold their fire. The Russian troops stopped the vehicle and ordered its occupants to step outside. They inspected the passengers' documents and thoroughly searched the vehicle. After finding nothing suspicious, they allowed the civilians to continue but kept their passports. When the civilians requested their documents back, the Russian soldiers responded by brutally beating them. Witnessing this, the colonel finally gave the order to fire. Within moments, the snipers pulled their triggers and eliminated every target at the checkpoint. The operation was completed successfully. After the mission ended and the soldiers returned to base, Makola noticed that many of his comrades were missing. Concerned, Makola asked, "Where are the rest of my comrades?" He was informed that the remaining soldiers had already been deployed on a separate mission. The following day, devastating news arrived. Many of those soldiers had been killed during that operation. Every one of them had fallen to a Russian sniper. The sniper's name was Siri, and he was considered the deadliest marksman in Russia. Several days later, Makola departed on another mission alongside his team. After arriving at their destination, they planted landmines throughout the area and took up defensive positions. Not long afterward, a group of Russian soldiers entered the zone. Among them was Avon, the same troublesome student who had constantly harassed Makola back when he taught at school. Now Avon had become a soldier in the Russian army. The moment the colonel gave the command to fire, Makola froze. He recognized his former student and struggled with the idea of killing him. However, he forced aside his emotions and instead fired at the nearby landmines. A massive explosion erupted, wiping out all the Russian soldiers, including Avon. Once the mission was over, the colonel angrily confronted him and asked what had been going through his mind when the firing order was given. Makola admitted that one of the enemy soldiers had once been his student, and that he had not wanted to kill him directly. The colonel explained that Avon was no longer his student but his enemy. Joining the Russian army had been Avon's own choice, and there was no reason to mourn him. After returning to base, the colonel continued spending a great deal of time with Mykola because he trusted him completely. One day, he showed Mykola a family photograph and explained that his household consisted of 3 people. He revealed that neither of his daughters knew he was a soldier. They believed he was a businessman because that was what he and his wife had told them. Hearing this, Mykola shared his own tragic story and spoke about how Russian soldiers had brutally murdered his wife. While recounting the memory, he became emotional, but the colonel comforted him. The next morning, they headed out on another mission. This operation was extremely important because intelligence had reported that a group of Russian soldiers would soon be passing through a specific route. The colonel and Mykola reached the location and prepared an ambush. After some time, they spotted 2 Russian soldiers waiting for the rest of their unit. As Mykola observed them through his scope, he suddenly recognized one of the men. It was the very soldier who had killed his wife. The man was directly in his sights. Mykola immediately requested permission to shoot, but the colonel denied the request. Rage began building inside him. This was the man responsible for destroying his life. The entire reason he had joined the army was to avenge his wife's death. He asked again for permission, but the colonel refused once more. Unable to contain himself any longer, Mykola pulled the trigger. The Russian soldier dropped dead instantly. Unfortunately, that single shot exposed their position to the enemy. The colonel turned toward Mykola and shouted in frustration, but an even greater danger was lurking nearby. Russia's most feared sniper, Siri, was already positioned in the area and now knew exactly where they were. Realizing the threat, the colonel immediately began searching for Siri's location. Before he could find him, a shot rang out. A bullet struck the colonel directly in the head, killing him instantly. At that moment, Mykola understood the terrible consequences of his decision. Because he had ignored orders, the colonel had lost his life. The Russians now knew where the Ukrainian team was hiding. Heavy gunfire and bombardment quickly followed as Russian soldiers launched an aggressive attack on Mykola's position. Recognizing that the situation had become hopeless, Mykola decided to retreat. He lifted the colonel's body and began pulling back from the battlefield. Eventually, he escaped enemy territory and returned safely to base. The colonel's death haunted him. Mykola blamed himself entirely and swore that he would kill Siri to avenge the fallen officer. Not long afterward, intelligence reported the presence of 2 Russian snipers. Mykola immediately volunteered for the mission. He reached the area, settled into position, and eliminated 1 sniper. During the engagement, the second sniper shot Mykola in the arm. Despite the injury, he refused to quit and managed to kill the second sniper as well. Severely wounded, he retreated to a secret base to recover. During this period, an army major contacted him and informed him that they had finally identified the sniper responsible for killing the colonel. After recovering, Mykola returned to base where the major briefed everyone. The sniper's name was Siri. He was considered Russia's greatest sniper, a man whose aim had supposedly never failed. According to intelligence, Siri had already killed 6 of Ukraine's finest snipers. The major warned everyone not to underestimate him. He also explained that Siri would record his kills and upload the footage to social media to weaken Ukrainian morale. Unlike most snipers, Siri rarely changed positions and preferred hunting his enemies from a single location. A plan was then created. 2 Ukrainian teams would approach Siri's position. The first team would attack from the front, drawing attention. While the Russians focused on them, the second team would strike from behind. Taking advantage of the distraction, Mykola would infiltrate the building and eliminate Siri. After the strategy was finalized, the operation began. Once they arrived, the snipers moved into position and aimed at their targets. Meanwhile, Mykola quietly entered the building. Inside, he found 2 Russian soldiers talking. Without hesitation, he killed both of them and continued deeper into the structure. Following the plan, Mykola gave the signal. The moment it was received, the Ukrainian snipers opened fire and eliminated multiple Russian soldiers. At the same time, Siri noticed that none of his men were responding. Sensing danger, he headed to the rooftop. Another Russian sniper was already stationed there. But when Siri arrived, he discovered the sniper was dead. Fear immediately crept in as he realized Ukrainian forces had surrounded him. Siri radioed his base for reinforcements, only to be told that backup would take another 10 minutes to arrive. Hearing this, he rushed back to his position and began searching for enemy soldiers. Then his eyes fell on a small wooden statue resting on a nearby table. It was the same statue carved by Mykola's wife. Before Siri could react, Mykola attacked him and stabbed him to death. The struggle alerted another sniper inside the building. Before the man could respond, Mykola threw a grenade toward him. The explosion killed the sniper instantly. Sometime later, the reinforcement team Siri had requested finally arrived, unaware that he was already dead. When they attempted to contact him, Mykola answered instead. He told them they were all going to die. Then he shot the truck driver. The gunshot triggered chaos among the Russian soldiers as they scrambled out of the vehicle. What they did not realize was that Ukrainian snipers were waiting in ambush. The Ukrainians opened fire, and eliminated the Russians one by one. A few days after the mission, Mykola visited his wife's grave. He felt that he had finally fulfilled the promise he made to her. The men responsible for killing his wife and the colonel were now dead. Standing before the grave, Mykola vowed that he would continue serving his country until his final breath. With that promise, he walked away. And this is where the film comes to an end.